Clem versus VortiX. At BO5, they are already in-game kicking us off with some Broken Crown.
All right, I'm assuming we're in game, but for now, in the bottom left, there we go. He's the Gaunt player. Or not the Gaunt player, he's the Inferno player. He's got the Gaunt thing.
He could be a Gaunt player.
I think he's probably a Gaunt player. Certainly we're seeing Conclave Vault Opener. But anyway, he's VortiX, and in the upper right, he's one of the players from the Katowice qualifier. One of the best StarCraft players, actually, just in current form. He's the Vanguard player. It's Clem.
Yeah, Clem, absolutely a player that if you're somebody that's been participating in StarCraft at any point in the last couple of years, Clem has been a big name. He is the Terran player for the European scene. He is the guy. He is the guy that people look up to. He is the guy that brings a lot of that late tournament representation, and I think a lot of people tuning in probably very excited to see him just because he's an extremely technical player. He can use a variety of strategies, but he is just so precise, and he's very good at keeping up his tempo while managing macro tasks back home. So a guy that can play at the speed that Clem can in a game where you can be in multiple different places at once in prolonged fights that don't end that fast. I can't wait to see, just how much he can do. And we've gotten to see a little bit of his gameplay so far in this tournament. But as we get deeper and deeper and we make it to these best of fives, we're really going to find out what he's made of. And it's looking like with that biokinetics lab and a couple of pups early on, BeoMulf might be something early and aggressive.
Yeah, Nate, there's this long debate, right? Are you a dog lover? Are you a cat lover? Are you are you both? And I guess
they're robots. They've tried to clarify that they are intended to be complete robots. So I think that's the angle I'm going to take with this.
We live in the future. These are robot. These are your robot companion. But
exactly.
I guess Clem is both. His profile picture on Steam is a cat, and he's hitting us with a ton of scouts into the main base.
In a world where Pokemon aren't real, they just give you a robot dog when you turn 12 instead. That's your companion forever, and I'm okay with that. That's my headcanon now. Cleans up the brute right in his face, by the way. It's incredibly aggressive opening to go for the upgraded dogs quickly. This was one of the builds that got nerfed over recently. The double on the cost and the research time made it a little bit harder to perhaps execute this or do it in the way that you would necessarily want to. But as far as Clem is concerned, I mean, we did just see him competing in a big tournament very recently. So as far as what meta strategies he's going to be playing up to, maybe this one is a teensy bit dated, but he's the kind of guy that can get value out of this throughout the whole match, right? In terms of playing for map control, trying to get the snipes off. Does grab both of the Gaunts in the back, so taking away some of the snowball potential there out of this early camp kill, and it gets at least still the Fiend from there, but not too much happening just yet, BeoMulf.
And shouting out as well. We saw one scout almost die, but it hit veterancy just in time, got a little bit more of a heal, and it's fine. Now the problem with this dog build, with this scout build, Nate, is what's happening right now. The scouts are really good against individual Gaunts. They can do a really nice job against, say, imps that we saw happen earlier. But once the army had like 2 or 3 brutes, a couple Gaunts, some Fiends on top, the scouts just don't punch through in time. So Clem, he gets a little bit of damage done early. He's a little annoying, but the map control is still in VortiX's favor. So he's got his natural, he's got his third base on the way, just about that 4-minute mark. It's the imps running over right now. There we go. 4 base goes down 358. So close enough. But again, the big deal here, VortiX has just about all the money on the map. So not only is the third base faster, he's gonna get a significant amount of Luminite, maybe some Therium as well, if he can steal the healing camp out of Clem, and use that to power his economy as well.
Yeah, there's so many different angles to play it, and I think that's probably the most interesting thing to keep in mind, though, is even though he has the map presence with the scouts, there's just only so much he can actually do against some of these units with them. So what does his follow-up look like? Are we going to see VortiX play around going for this big economic play? I mean, he's got his third base up pretty fast after clearing the camps through. We'd have some of the Fiends being hunted down by the scouts. And it's kind of weird because if scouts could be microed such that they always were alive, then you can kind of see where, okay, he's got some crazy micro strategy planned out here, but not going quite the way he was wanting to. Accidentally starts the biokinetics lab in the middle of the map, and I think we're just seeing perhaps VortiX feeling a little sharper on the day to start this one off. Is this game one looking a little rough for Clem control-wise?
Yeah, the dog upgrade, the scout upgrade that we were talking about, getting gear grind beryllium claws, well, it doubled its cost in Therium and Luminite, and also gained about a minute's worth of upgrade time is the big deal right there. So there's a reason that this build was very strong. There's a reason it is less strong right now. You just don't get it quick enough to really be worth doing. And now, well, yeah, sure, Clem got something done early, but there's a ton of army in his main base. Now, there's an overcharge on some of these bobs, not all of them. Notice VortiX is targeting down the bobs on the bottom side to try to spawn the fiends on that one. And the surround is pretty solid, to be totally honest. A lot of these units will go down, but the fiends are starting to spawn. The splash is starting to be here. And honestly, even if Clem holds on at this point, he has lost so much of his economy that I don't think VortiX, even as he lost like a 3 or 4 gaunts, a brood or 2, I don't think he's going to be that upset about it.
It's a rough blow to take early on, especially pulling everything off. It's not just that he held it; it's that whole entire time he's not really mining anything. So your ability to reinforce, to build while that's happening, kind of goes out the window. And VortiX with a very strong start. Just you understand the infernal mechanics quite a bit better than I do BeoMulf. So I'll ask: is there an animus impact in play when he's getting that many kills on the other side of the map early, or is it just stacking up the fiends and hurting the economy?
It's not as much as if it was on his own shroud, because you get 1 animus per supply killed if you are just on the map. It's 1.5 if you're back on shroud. So
okay,
yes, Nate, there is. This probably got him up to at least one reset on the charges, so he can develop his economy up a little bit more. But really, you're doing this because you're punishing your opponent for doing something that didn't really work out all that well. You're getting damage done to him. You're shutting his production down. You're shutting his army down. You're denying some veterancy on things. And that really is the goal here. And also, look at this. We got 2 Lancers on the map, but there is a bunch of blue on the other side.
Yep, we're starting to see that Doombringer drop come back into play. And it's gotten a couple of tweaks. It's definitely something that has been very, very popular. And we like to see these kind of dynamic. For me, we talked about during the qualifiers about a week ago about how so many of the games was a lot of ground units kind of slowly engaging. But now that players are getting more of an in-depth understanding of how the units interact with each other and what you can and can't get away with, we're starting to see some more ambitious play styles like this, where even though it's still a lot of macro back home, there's still a lot of big economy happening. Players are constantly looking for ways to get a little bit of that poke and prod going, and that Doombringer micro we've seen from some of these top guys has been nothing short of stellar.
You know, Nate, this is technically an Inferno player that's doing that, that's playing that air more complex setup at the moment. So does that make it not an ambitious setup, but an imp-vicious setup? Okay.
I thought you were gonna be like, I thought you were gonna hit me with some like caster trope, like what if he used 2 Doombringers and microed on both halves? You know, yes. I'm just gonna give you a yes. There you go. I'm gonna give you a yes because I'm feeling pretty good, and it's Saturday. So take it. The Exo's coming to contest that resource camp in the middle as the Doombringer hits the main base one more time. And as eventually you're starting to play around that overcharge cooldown as he does pop it one more time, but a couple of the bobs are still very low, so they are going to spawn. And there is an attack on the south side, but I like this. He's got the meat farm blocking the positioning a little bit too, so creating a stall point for this army, but he's got a couple of the Shroud Stones set up behind it. So at some point here, Clem will likely break that and start to move a little bit further forward, but how much can he really do? It's not that big of an army, and no med techs, so no long-term sustain with this either.
Well, he can go take the health camp and try to make something happen. But remember here, Clem's all in. He is massively all in. It's a 4-base Inferno player. Clem's on 2, and there's no way this happens now. There's a Hellborn on the map.
Yeah.
No, this is not going to happen. Clem is playing with borrowed time, and really he's trying to borrow time maybe out of the next game. There is not a whole lot he can do, and yeah, he's going to be forced to tap out.
GG. So VortiX taking game 1 in a pretty clean fashion. Clem going for a strategy that has, I mean, it's not like you can't do it, but especially versus Infernal, where you're not necessarily, you're not making them pull extra imps off to repair or anything like that. You're not forcing overcharges. So I think in Vanguard versus Vanguard, dogs can still be very annoying to play against in the early game, even after the patch, especially against people that are really good at controlling them. But VortiX was so ready for that, it seemed. Even with a couple of his units getting grabbed early on, you mentioned it, Clem went for the map control build and gave up basically everything to have it, and still didn't end up having it.
Yeah, you know what, Nate? VortiX has played, what is this? He's played 100, almost 180 games on his main account. I don't know if he has another one elsewhere, but 180 games on his main account. And a significant number of those were played before February 13th, before the dog patch changed. So, or before that idea was nerfed. So his ability to handle this has been forged in the fires of extremely powerful scout timings. This is totally fine. Again, he's dealt with so much worse.
Yeah. I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see where we go from here. I guess because it's Vanguard versus Infernal. I'm also wondering what the thought process or perhaps the approach will be to Jagged Maw, which you at some point I guess you kind of expect to. Yeah, it's best of 5, 3 maps. You're gonna have to deal with it at some point or another. So we'll get there. I think we're going to Secluded Grove though for game 2, as I believe we are loaded in. Thanks guys for watching today. We really appreciate it. Lots of great Stormgate going on all day, all weekend.
I think what was it? Killer Pigeon did the math, and it's like close to 100 potential games of Stormgate over these 3 days, which is just, I mean, awesome.
There will be a test. You will be getting an email with a test afterwards. This is not a drill. Please,
if you don't remember,
make sure you're paying attention.
Yeah, if you don't remember what happened on game 57,
Exactly.
if you're in the if you're in the beta, that access is rescinded. Just fair warning.
Exactly. Your essay questions would be something like, over the course of the middle 50 to final 20 games, how much less did players build dogs? And it's good. It's good info. It's good. Good to stay on top of stuff.
I got an easy one, Nate. What is the win rate of Vanguard players on Jagged Maw?
I have not seen a Vanguard player lose on Jagged Maw today, though. So I'm inclined to say 100% right now.
Clearly, that's how that works.
I might have missed a few. You guys it starts pretty early. I think I woke up maybe 2 or 3 matches into today's broadcast, so I tried to catch as much as I could. But Jagged Maw hasn't been that bad. Everybody's overcompensating now, and we're seeing that change the way the games play out, which is, another one of the great discussions of having these early tournaments where the meta is developing hour to hour of the broadcast. Sometimes it feels like.
And it's really fun to watch players like Clem as well, who, again, he's played a lot of games of Stormgate. He has not necessarily played a lot of games of Stormgate on this patch, if you look down and pay attention to the leaderboard when doing whatever he's done. Because he had EGCTV, that's a $500,000 tournament. You're prepping for that one instead. So we're seeing Clem's skill in Stormgate, not necessarily his patch, but the skill in Stormgate start to develop and show through. But we're also seeing him play these games and watch these replays and see what successful Vanguard players are doing and put his own spin on it, put his own flair on that kind of in real time, which is not, again, this is not something we get to see all that often. You watch, say, EGCTV, for example, and everyone's got their builds locked in, and the meta, it develops a little bit, obviously, but not nearly to the same speed. So I got my notebook out. I'm figuring out just how to dominate the ladder tomorrow. This is what's happening.
Yeah, there's so many good strategies just to look at, even especially across the qualifier. Just from the ladder heroes qualifying in last week, there was such a crazy range of builds, and obviously there was the patch after that point. So it's not like the game is even the same as it was back then, which I guess maybe not all of those strategies may necessarily be viable. But forget that. We've got a bunch of imps in Clem's main Luminite line. Several bobs getting picked off very early here. Definitely a tough start for our Vanguard player.
Yeah, we saw how effective the greed was coming out of Lucifron in that last series. Well, this time not as much. And Clem, he's harkening back to a time when Hedgehog builds were oppressive. Hedgehog builds were the way you played this matchup. They were just so very good. They put so much pressure on the map, chase things down. So he's got Hedgehogs on the map again. And look at this, VortiX. He hides in the trees and the tall grass. And now he's got one gaunt that has like 0 HP, but it still applies infest on top of everything. We're going to see a run by into the main base as overcharge.
As soon as the overcharge, as soon as he pops it too. Just, great heads up awareness.
How is that one Bob still overcharged?
he's jacked, man. He eats at the freshest restaurants and wears the finest clothes. That's all we can say. He's super Bob. Only one from this base. Only one from this base managed to get that power up.
Just that cool. But at the very least, it does deny the run by that VortiX was looking to go for. And behind this, he's got no imps on the natural, right? He's got his third. Wait a minute. This is a 3 Shrine Inferno player, and he's got like 15 imps.
I think I've heard this one before. It's called what does they say? It's a macro hatch or something is the word for it. It's like I built it so I could make stuff, but not. Well, this isn't that game, so that doesn't really apply. But interesting either way. He wants to secure the position with his money before he actually invests, which it feels weird to use that word, into the economy, because he's obviously invested a lot into it. Just hasn't gotten the imps yet, and we can see why. He wants to hold back the hedgehog harass. He wants to keep this attack back. I guess he's thinking to himself, situate the base first, then saturate, because this is just going to be a lot of pressure out of Clem. And we can see the hedgehog did get a little bit of a buff on the missile reload time, so that period of attack between them anyway, when they don't have them all stored up, is huge. But if you haven't seen the hedgehog yet, you're just tuning in, use Stormgate. It stores up to 4 missiles that it can fire pretty much all at once, and then it recovers them at about a missile per half a second or something. So it's still pretty fast, but the idea is you go in, you get a shot off, you go out, reload, go back in, rinse, repeat.
Dude, Clem is broken. Can we acknowledge this for a second? Look at these hedgehogs. They have like no weight. Okay, the Shroudstone's gonna get manifested, and that's nice, but again, that's 50 Animus. In the early, as the game goes later, that matters less, but that's, you're not gonna have the ability to go and get more charges, right? That's kind of the big deal right there. That's the expense that Clem has been forcing out, and yeah, he did lose a hedgehog, but his hedgehogs have been so cost effective this game, to the point where I was kind of looking at that back and forth. I'm like, wait a minute, is Clem gonna win the game with 3 hedgehogs? Is that what's gonna happen right now? And the answer is no. It seems like VortiX has been able to stabilize just a little bit, but the value that Clem is getting off these roly-poly boys right now it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, they're super fast, and they kind of have that acceleration deceleration effect with some of their stuff, so it can be a little bit unwieldy controlling them with other units. But out of a high level player, especially if you can keep them alive, you can really see them generate that value. The only thing that I ever wince at, though, when you see the units get traded, especially if you get any early kills on them, that veterancy stacks up. It's something that we do want to see them try to accumulate, because then those hedgehogs can become even that much more powerful. He's going to clean up these chickens and take the vision camp, give himself a nice look-see at VortiX's base, which of course can be helpful for picking a point that he might want to try to push through or harass on. However he chooses to go about it. He did take his 3rd behind this too, BeoMulf, so setting himself up economically pretty well and just continuing to add some more hedgehogs to the front. Wants the Lancers to tank against it. They do pretty good damage against the static defense. It's one of the specialties of the hedgehogs. It's not too tough to break that down, but only he's going to be able to grab one before he has to retreat.
I can't believe that he's letting this meat farm survive on 5 HP, 3 HP, something very small, but I guess it's going to be fine. And the cool thing, by the way, about these hedgehog openers, not only is it putting a lot of pressure on it, hedgehog's anti-air is pretty dang strong. It does a nice job. They have to, of course, siege up and do that, but it does give you another option to handle this Doombringer drop, which, by the way, you're trying to pay attention to where this game... Clem is just in perfect position. He knows what's happening. He's already ready for it. He's got himself perfectly set up. But you talk about this, it is almost 8 minutes in this game. Oh, he's not quite, it's good enough. Okay, he's gonna ward it away. We're almost 8 minutes into this game, Nate, and the Doombringer drop is only hitting right now. You want a really tangible idea about just how much VortiX has been slowed down? There's your number. Wait a minute. How low is that? Okay, it's still okay, but man, these hedgehogs, they're punishing.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, it's like you pointed out, they basically do both roles, but they have to switch. You have to transform, and then of course they become stationary. And it's interesting in the context of the bio with the bio army, because the Lancers are generally going to do a lot of stuff on the ground, but the range on the hedgehogs can be a little bit deceptive. When they go into that anti-air mode, there you've got something of a missile turret there. It's very powerful, very huge amount, and the rocket mechanic functions about the same too. So you can get huge bursts. They can actually be picked up while sieged in evacs, just like the Atlas too. So if you're somebody trying styles where you don't really have as many exos, or if you lose them, you can juggle them around and avoid damage, avoid shots with them with the pickup micro. So something to keep in mind. Mobile missile turrets for anti-air.
One of the cooler things I've seen in Stormgate already is Mixu, of course, is a very strong Vanguard player. He's unfortunately didn't qualify for this tournament, but he's very strong. And he was playing, I forget who he was playing, on stream the other days. Hornets are just not, or the hedgehogs are just not quite in range. but he had 4 med techs, or 4 evacs, excuse me, or 2 evacs, however many it is, and he hot dropped 8 hornet, or 8, wow, I can't get these words right, hot dropped 8 hedgehogs on top of a flayed dragon to instantly kill him. And it's just about the coolest move I've seen thus far. Now, are we there yet? Absolutely not. In fact, I think Clem is just gonna run right past this army and maybe do a little bit more, but he does have to deal with a run by on his 4th base.
Yeah, so the harass is coming back again. He tried to set up the hedgehogs in anti-air across the tree line. Like, you could see that he had this really well thought out play to catch the Doombringer the first time, but now it's being reinforced by the brutes and of course the Magmadons trampling through the trees. No longer a safe area for him to fight, and that infest hits quite a bit of the units too, so he wasn't really able to micro out of that with Magmadons. They're just going to trample their way through while the Fiends clean up a couple of the Exos left on the front line. And all of a sudden, what looked like a good move for Clem, suddenly he's out of position, loses the 4th base. And well, the base itself might actually still be there, but he's effectively lost the ability to use it in a whole huge amount of his army at the same time. No static defense to fall back on over here either.
Hey, Nate, don't worry. There are 2 Bobs mining out of that base, so clearly it's still fine. It's okay.
Technically it counts. Technically it counts. I surrender.
Vanguard copium, but yeah, no, as the Gaunts return, it's this thing's gonna go down pretty quickly. In fact, what they're doing is they're just baiting out the Exos to say, hey, come defend this, you need to. And in the meantime, we're gonna go and splash you down and kill you off. But was this a mistake, actually? A lot of these Gaunts are gonna fall down. The Hedgehogs are still there. A couple Fiends are gonna get spawned with Mentex and Exos starting to arrive. Okay, no, there's more reinforcements. The base will fall. So yeah, you know, losing more Gaunts than you maybe would have liked to, Nate, but the base is dead. The access to the Therium is gone, and Clem, he's back against the ropes here.
What we're seeing is like really good attempts at mechanical play from Clem, but VortiX is he's just using everything at like almost the perfect possible time that you could. It's like, yeah, am I going to catch you? Am I going to have the Hedgehogs pre-positioned in the one spot where I know you want to go? Sure, but you're just not going to go that way, or the recall timing is going to be at just the right time with when he uses it. There are so many almost moments in this game that we've already seen. And for VortiX, it feels like his economy has just been rolling along smoothly. There's been some heavy trades, but you're trading out for veterancy units. If you look at Clem's army, almost none of his units have veterancy. He doesn't have those stacked up charges, so the units aren't really gaining that prowess that they should be. So how do you defend against an attack like this? I don't really think you can, but this could be a deciding fight if Clem just chooses to engage. We have several Shroud Stones going up to reinforce this, but they're not done just yet, Beo.
You know, Nate, I was going to say the answer is you don't, and if the Hellborn can get set up, I think that answer is correct. Clem is splitting against this a little bit. Notice, of course, when you talk about splash damage, we're used to just being a big circle, right? But Hellborn, they attack one unit and it splashes behind them, kind of like a shotgun shell or something. So notice Clem was getting his split set up for that. But again, the trick is, the problem here is he just doesn't have enough. The army is very small. Clem, he tries to last as long as he can, but Clem now goes down 0-2 once again. And you want to go back to where things went wrong, it probably was killing the small army on the left side and letting his 4th base get annihilated in the time being, just losing track of where VortiX was.
Yeah, it's really tough because it feels like in this for some of the earlier types of Vanguard play that we've seen, especially at the higher level, there's almost you see like this the kind of trying to go to this. All right, I'm gonna make Exos, and make Lancers, and if you don't have as many med techs in the early game, they're expensive. They're very they're a little later tech. You need upgrades that are expensive for them to do all of the things that you want. But when the Infernal just doesn't take that damage, actually, let's just take it all the way back to, remember when he went double Shrine and just didn't have any imps on either of them because he was so focused on just like this perfect spacing between his meat farm and his turret, like that all he was going to do was not die to the first couple of Hedgehogs, and then it was just smooth sailing from there on out. Just VortiX demonstrating again what seems like a really in-depth understanding of situational awareness in Stormgate.
Yeah, and as I look at this as well, so there have been, I've seen a couple Hedgehog builds on the ladder that you see players going for, and one of the things they'll do is they'll pull a couple Bobs, right, maybe 2 or 3, and they'll build a sentry post not on the 3rd base because that's kind of hard to keep up, but just a little bit further behind, and they'll stick a Bob inside of it, and suddenly you have this repair turret that is keeping your Hedgehogs alive, allowing them to be a little bit more aggressive and sit there and do things. And Clem almost won the game on those first 3 Hedgehogs. Almost. VortiX was able to hold on. the game went on, of course, and VortiX eventually wins. But that was he loses like 2 hedgehogs on very, very low because he overcommits them. If he's got even just a couple bobs, not even on a repair turret, just hold there to repair, those hedgehogs stay alive, and maybe he does push through. I don't know. Certainly,
Yeah.
we're gonna, yeah,
I think the other thing too, the first Hedgehog and the first Lancer that both died to the Super Shroud Stone summon, I believe both of those actually did have the veterancy. So the only units he had any veterancy on from the early game were pretty much always the ones that got traded out. It's a very different approach, like methodology wise, from what you would come from as a Terran, where everything is kind of expendable in a way, to I want to retain units in Stormgate when I'm playing Vanguard, because it's not just a +1. It's up to 30% extra damage or attack speed, and in many ways those things can be worth a whole lot more than just the bare stats themselves.
yeah, and it's pretty cool as well when we look at what's happening here. Or you talk about Vanguard trying to be the unit or the race, the faction that keeps all their units alive as long as possible. And it's kind of interesting, right? Because Infernals are all about, yeah, I actually don't care about my units dying. This is great. I'm going to get Animus. I'm going to sacrifice them. The Imps turn themselves into buildings. Brutes turn themselves into Fiends. Gaunts sacrifice other units into it. So kind of cool that we have these 2 very thematic options. I'm going to sacrifice everything, and I'm going to keep everything alive. So, that's more of a lore thing, and we don't know a ton about that just yet. But it is... does that mean our third faction is going to simultaneously care about keeping their units alive and want to sacrifice everything? Is that how that works?
When we saw like the really good Hornet control, I feel like that's where it demonstrates itself really well. Like it's not visually as apparent when you get the health buff on the Lancers and they just become kind of impossible to kill with their veterancy, but especially for the units that are doing the harass, right? The ones, your big damage dealers, when you're taking a couple of shots at those stones, right? You're trying to clear out some of that static defense so that you can create space for yourself. Having that Hedgehog with a +20, +10, 20% damage, that's huge. It's a big deal. You see, he tries to get that third Bob over there for the hanger, and Observer astutely pointing out, sometimes if it can't find the place, it'll just go to the next shift command, and that'll be mining or making stuff. So Dog's gonna try to come out here and be as annoying as possible during the securing of the speed camp. See if he can get the last hit. You called it out when he did it in the previous game, but not easy to do. And he actually does get jumped. So nowhere to escape there for early bonus fiend for VortiX.
He almost did, but unfortunately, I think maybe he lost vision or something, because the dog was there. The cooldown, the backswing or whatever it is on the Gaunt was like, that was a snipeable goat. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen today. The AI.
Snipeable goat.
Yes.
Words I never thought we'd say casting something together, but I love it.
Yeah, Nate, I didn't know that Cyril was in Stormgate as a unit, but apparently he is.
That's like, that's the flavor text they put on. Like, at some point they're like, yeah, some are placeholders, but we actually do just have a goat unit, and if you mouse over it, sometimes they give you some info and it'll just say something like from the Serahal region of Finland or Finlandia, whatever real or not real Earth monikers they go for.
Well, for now, I mean, these imps, these Gaunts are being... it's a Hornet opener, absolutely, but it's a one-base one, and this army is being annoying, but hey, you know what? You have a Hornet. It can be repaired. This is absolutely no trouble. It's annoying for Clem, but it's going to be kind of fine at the end. And the thing that I think is actually really cool as we pay attention to this series, a Laser and Luciferon was one build, kind of, 2 builds maybe, just very doing the same thing over and over again and actually getting different results. Clem has played 3 very different builds in this series. Game 1, he goes Scouts. It doesn't really work out all that well. Game 2, he plays a little bit greedier. And, he's got opportunities. He plays Hedgehogs. And now we got that one-base Vulcan idea as more Fiends in the main base here. Man, VortiX is not giving it a rest.
I really think that this is the best way to handle it too, because he's saying your economy is already so low and limited that if he's constantly chaining out overcharges just to defend, it's worth pointing out he can't really use them to build stuff. And right before the hangar bay finished, the overcharge was to build that too. So he's just, you're putting yourself in a situation where you're just so completely all in. You've rushed an air unit with no wall, no real capability to defend yourself. And like we've talked about before, it's not quite as easy to just go in and wipe out a whole resource gathering line. You're not going to just walk in with a couple of those and kill everything. And they build a little bit faster. It's not quite the same for that level of harass. Players are getting to that point where they can kind of shrug it off, and that's what we've seen So we've seen so far in this series, and VortiX is like, yeah, I know, but I'm actually still going to counterattack him again. I just can't stop. I just can't stop.
And I love as well, you saw those Hornets just sitting there because, of course, when you return to Hangar, which is a great way to get things back and heal up, the Hornets are uncontrollable until they heal back up all the way. So you just have the Hornet pilots like just silently screaming as their base gets ravaged by the Fiends. Like, oh, that's I guess a bit of a cinematic moment. But now VortiX, he's got Shroud Stones everywhere. He's got these Fiends. He will not give this up. And Clem, he's gonna get his natural done. He can drop an overcharge in time, but even with 50% less damage, even with 100 armor, it's not gonna be enough here. And you know what? It's been a bit of a rough series for Clem. He's played games where things have not worked, but this is, I mean, this is the first game where I'm looking at this. I'm like, wow, you know, Clem is being outclassed by VortiX. This is just, at this point, you're generally not building Fiends, right? You can get a couple off the creep camps, fine, but you're really not building Bruce. You're not building Fiends. But VortiX has identified that, yeah, Clem is not defending against this, so he keeps building Brutes. He keeps converting them into Fiends, and Clem has taken game-ending damage effectively off this. I mean, he got a natural now, Nate, but it is so much delayed.
Yeah, we can really see it's just been a crazy amount of pressure. All he can do is kind of keep some map control with the Hornets, or at least try to do so, but I mean, loses another one. It's worth pointing out, these 3 Hornets in this base, they've all got veterancy. They've at least got that bonus 20% attack speed. They are just straight up so much better than a new, freshly built Hornet that Clem could send out. It's really important to keep that in mind. The retention on these, when you see those little yellow divot guys pop up next to the health bar that I don't know the name of, that's the big thing to keep in mind. Those are the units you do not want to lose. Clem's just going to tap out. He's just giving up here, and that is it. GG VortiX with the 3-0.
You know, Nate, the Hornets, they did a good job. They did not do enough, and unfortunately, they weren't able to hit that final evolution, right? You have Hornets, and they're great, do whatever, but if they hit tier 3, they turn into murder Hornets.
So you saying they were left as metapods and never quite reached B-Drill?
Yeah, I surely understand that is a Pokemon reference that I absolutely understand.
I went for a mix. I mostly did that. I mixed up Kakuna with Metapod, so chat will really love that one. They'll get pretty upset, but yeah, I was going for a B-Drill joke. It's okay.
You were so close.
I think we're supposed to bring the host back. Save us. Save us.
No, I defend you against that. That's like early generation Pokemon. There's no excuse at our ages, okay? But let's quickly let's switch over to see if Clem had an excuse here. VortiX looking absolutely dominant in this series, guys. I mean, you know, Clem, I think the impressive part in this as well is like Clem has been one of the most impressive micros we've seen so far in this tournament. But was it? I don't think it was just strategy from VortiX BeoMulf that gave him the upper hand, right? Like each of these games, he was out microing Clem as well.
I mean, I'm willing to put a lot of this up to strategy, to be totally honest. Yes, he was out microing. He was out multitasking a little bit because it's funny when we talk about any RTS, you talk about APM and the ability to, you know, you're going to see a player like Clem playing at 450 APM or something in StarCraft. But that APM is in part the fingers moving fast on the keyboard and the mouse, but that also is knowing what to do at any given point. And while Clem has played a ton of Stormgate, he has not played a ton on this build. He has not played a ton on this patch. So what we're seeing here is VortiX, he knows what to do at every single moment. He's got the game mathed out in a way that it really does not seem that Clem has. So yeah, out microing, but more because it seems like VortiX at every state of the game just knows how to respond to things.